About 40,000 years ago, a prehistoric hunter walked back to his group empty-handed. He could have told the truth that he'd missed the shot, that the animal had gotten away, that he'd simply spent the day wandering without finding anything worth chasing. Instead, he pointed toward the horizon and said he'd seen an entire herd moving in the opposite direction, far from where the group had planned to hunt next. The group packed up and moved on, wasting a full day of travel, while he quietly kept the genuinely excellent hunting ground he'd actually found for himself. There's no way to prove that exact scene happened, word for word, but according to researchers who study the origins of deception, something almost identical had to have happened thousands of times across early human history, because lying isn't a modern invention layered on top of some more innocent original human nature. It's one of the oldest cognitive tools we have, and it showed up long before written language, long before permanent settlements or cities, and probably long before Homo sapiens even existed as a distinct species. To lie effectively, you need something researchers call theory of mind, the ability to understand that another person holds their own separate, independent set of beliefs inside their head, distinct from your own, and that you have the power to manipulate what that person believes without what you're saying needing to be true. Researchers studying primates have found solid evidence of exactly this kind of manipulation in chimpanzees and bonobos, deliberately hiding food from more dominant group members, faking complete disinterest in something they actually wanted, waiting patiently until a rival looked away before acting on their real intentions. If our closest living evolutionary relatives can already reliably pull off this kind of strategic deception, it strongly suggests the underlying capacity for lying predates modern humans entirely, sitting somewhere back in the shared ancestor we split off from millions of years before Homo sapiens ever existed. Once you move forward to early Homo sapiens specifically, the evidence gets considerably more detailed. Anthropologists studying small-scale hunter-gatherer societies still living today, groups whose lifestyle closely resembles how most humans lived for the vast majority of our species' history, have extensively documented deception as a completely routine part of everyday social life, not some rare moral failing. Hunters exaggerating the danger of an animal specifically to justify coming home early without losing social standing. People quietly concealing especially good food finds to avoid the social obligation of sharing everything equally. False claims about exactly who spotted a resource first when it came time to stake a claim over limited hunting ground. None of this required writing anything down, and in the earliest stages, it likely didn't even require particularly complex spoken language. It just required one thing: someone else who could plausibly be fooled. Some researchers go further and argue that lying didn't simply appear alongside growing human intelligence as an unrelated coincidence. It may have actually helped drive that intelligence in the first place. This is sometimes called the Machiavellian intelligence hypothesis, and the basic premise is that ongoing social manipulation within groups, rather than pure tool use or environmental problem solving, was one of the biggest evolutionary pressures pushing early human brains to grow larger and more complex over time. Think about the cognitive workload involved. If you're constantly trying to figure out who around you might currently be deceiving you, while simultaneously trying to deceive others yourself without getting caught, that's an enormous ongoing mental burden. You need to track multiple people's individual beliefs at once. Remember your own previous lies accurately enough to avoid contradicting yourself, and read subtle social cues carefully enough to catch other people's lies before they cost you something. Some evolutionary psychologists believe this continuous arms race between skilled deceivers and skilled lie detectors was a genuine driver behind why human social cognition expanded as dramatically as it did. There's a fascinating flip side to this, and it might be even more interesting than the lying itself. The same cognitive tools that let a person lie convincingly are largely the same tools needed to reliably detect when someone else is lying to you. Researchers who study deception in modern humans have consistently found that skilled, practiced liars also tend to be unusually good at spotting lies coming from other people, because both skills draw on the same underlying mental ability to model what's actually happening inside someone else's head, separate from whatever that person happens to be claiming out loud. In small, tightly interdependent hunter-gatherer groups, where everyone depended on everyone else for basic survival, getting caught lying repeatedly could realistically get a person socially isolated from the group, or in more severe cases, could threaten their access to shared resources entirely. So early humans weren't simply evolving the ability to deceive others in isolation. They were evolving at essentially the same evolutionary timescale, the parallel ability to catch deception coming from others, creating constant pressure for both competing skill sets to keep improving together, generation after generation. Archaeologists have even found supporting physical evidence for this pattern in a place you might not expect: ancient burial sites. Grave goods, tools, jewelry, and personal ornaments deliberately buried alongside the dead sometimes show clear, detectable signs of being deliberately faked rather than genuine. Researchers have documented shell beads carefully colored or treated specifically to imitate rarer, more valuable materials that weren't actually locally available. Stone tools shaped to visually look fully functional, despite showing no wear patterns indicating they were ever actually used or properly sharpened. Some researchers interpret findings like these as early physical evidence of deliberate status deception. People, or more likely their surviving families, attempting to visually communicate a level of wealth or skill that didn't fully exist in reality, aimed specifically at observers who would never get a realistic chance to closely examine or verify the claim afterward. Not every researcher agrees on exactly when this cognitive capacity first emerged, or how gradually it developed. Some argue basic deceptive behaviors trace back many millions of years, deeply embedded in general primate social behavior long before anything resembling modern humans existed. Others argue that truly complex language-based lying, deliberately constructing a false narrative, consistently maintaining it over extended periods, and anticipating what someone else needs to hear in order to believe it, required the kind of sophisticated language that only developed alongside, or possibly even after, the emergence of early Homo sapiens. What nearly everyone studying this topic agrees on, despite these disagreements about timing, is that lying isn't some moral flaw that gradually crept into otherwise honest human behavior later in our history. It appears instead to be fundamentally baked into the exact same cognitive architecture that also gave us complex social bonds, large-scale cooperation, and eventually, human culture itself. So the next time you catch a small, mostly harmless lie slipping out of your own mouth without even fully thinking about it, running a few minutes late, pretending to genuinely like a gift you don't actually want, you're not doing anything even remotely new. You're running cognitive software that's been an active part of the human survival toolkit for tens of thousands of years, refined the exact same way early stone tools were, through constant trial, frequent error, and occasionally getting caught. If lying really is this deeply built into how human brains fundamentally work, do you think it's even genuinely possible for any society to function long-term on total, complete honesty? If this made you think about it, hit subscribe. There are plenty more strange questions waiting for answers.